It was astonishing to go with the Orwell Prize to Burma after being 12 years on the blacklist. And here is a country where George Orwell was an imperial policeman, which was an Orwellian regime for decades, and which now is confronting all the dilemmas that Orwell himself faced as a political writer. So you had, as it were, 3 times Orwell, 3 times Burma.
George Orwell, the extraordinary thing about him is he actually lived in Burma for a while, and he felt and he understood the sentiments of the people, I think. And also some of the things he predicted came through.
I have this book for more than 20 years. Can you believe that? Well, when I came upon it, the story goes like that. I was a college student, and then once I had a chance to see the animation of George Orwell, Animal Farm. So at first I thought that it was just the animal fable, right? Okay, but when I was watching that, it's go deeper than that. And then later I found out from my father that actually this book was not just the animal fable, right? It attacks all forms of tyranny, and once this book was banned in Burma. So, well, understandably, we have this kind of this tyrant government, so it's not easy to be found.
I got 1984 in George Orwell book, and I'm very happy because it's a kind of a rare book, and I want to read it so much, but I can't find it.
That's a universal truth. I must say that some animals, I still like my favorite line, some animals are more equal than others, right? It applies to everywhere, not just to government.
Burmese Days, which is perhaps my favorite of Orwell's books, is still considered, a masterpiece in the contemporary sense. So it's important that, as well as having the Orwell connection, Burmese poets are often talking to me about Orwell and Burmese Days, yet they're able to see what else has happened, since this kind of keystone publication. So I think it's exciting to see that things are developing.
I was there 13 years ago. I talked to people who'd spent years in prison, been reduced to eating rats which they cooked in the sunshine because there was nothing else to eat. Talked to editors of small magazines who were faced with the crudest imaginable censorship, whole pages blanked out, the censor always suspecting some allegory. Even an article about mosquitoes in Rangoon was censored. Writers who'd spent many, many years in prison, newspapers that were a kind of new version of Newspeak. It was, as I say, pretty much the closest we've got in recent times to an Orwellian regime.
I was elected as a member of parliament in 1990, but they refused. You have already know this. Instead of coming to the parliament, they put me in jail. Yes, you should know that.
I was a student when the 1988 uprising occurred, and I was one of the leaders in my hometown. And after the military coup in September that year, I fled to the Thai-Burma border, areas controlled by Karenni rebels. I spent 1 year there, and then eventually I was rescued by a King Don who took me to Bangkok and then eventually to Cambridge.
Last August, censorship was formally abolished. Actually, it was just pre-censorship that was abolished. You still have to submit the articles afterwards, and it's still not clear what that really means.
A number of us have noticed that actually there's a bit of a contrast between the openness of foreign speakers in the sessions here at the festival and the substance of what Burmese people are saying. And local people, I think, are rightly rather guarded about what they're happy to say in front of a large crowd. and not surprisingly, they're used to being watched and recorded and monitored. And in previous times, they've been used to getting into trouble for speaking their minds. So I suppose that's entirely natural. But nonetheless, the fact of this festival is a remarkable thing.
In the literary field, we are seeing the content which is not allowed in the past. Something like in the journals, in the news. In the past, the sensitive news about the opposition party or something critical about the government were not allowed to be published. But now we are seeing more, open and critical views about the politics as well in the newspaper. And for the literary work, fiction, non-fiction, and for poetry, particularly for poetry, in the past, we had to wait for a long time to get the poetry book published.
This new poetry that has come out after the end of the censorship law about 6 months ago, they say that these new poems are very direct and using words that have never been used in the whole of Myanmar poetry world for about 50 to 60 years, and then coming up with direct sentiments instead of using images or metaphors or symbols to hide the meaning. So in a way, these poems are more direct, more accessible, but the negative point is some older poets lament that this art of poetry has somehow decreased.
I know that they are trying to change a lot of things, but I'm still nervous about certain things, especially come into the kind of long-term freedom for the people.
Of course it's amazing. Of course it's day and night to see Aung San Suu Kyi being mobbed at a literary festival where writers who were and journalists who were in prison until recently can now speak extremely freely. And there's this explosion of magazines and books. They're on every street corner, you see them. But there are some big questions open. One is the censorship really gone, or won't it be reintroduced covertly under the name of regulations? And by ownership, something we're familiar with in Britain, the cronies of the military now owning the main publications and channels. Secondly, when you open Pandora's box, everything comes out, including quite a lot of hate speech, for example against the Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State. What do you actually do about that, about direct incitement to violence? And then of course for the creative writers, there's the kind of question, well, what do I write about now? For decades, writers were chipping away at the wall of censorship, and suddenly the wall has come down, and they have to work out what they write about now, given all this unaccustomed freedom.